Right now in this country, there are a lot of people saying negative things about immigrants. Their anger and frustration are understandable, but their rhetoric and political responses are not worthy of America's proud history of being a country of immigrants and a beacon of hope for the world's poor and prosecuted. Because both sides in this debate tonight recognize the abuses of migrants as a moral issue that must be addressed as one, they will not be arguing the rights of migrant workers and their families are not extremely important. They will both agree that we need to push for the reform and protection of all migrants. How it is accomplished is another story. There are many ways to approach the solution to the ever-growing problem migrants are facing. The debate tonight states, resolved, all states should immediately ratify the UN Convention on the Rights of Migrant Workers and their Families. The pro side of the debate will be in favor of the resolution, and the con side or negative side will be supporting an alternative solution.
20 years ago, the UN General Assembly adopted the International Convention on the Protection of the Rights of All Migrants, Workers, and Members of Their Families, also known as the Migrant Workers Convention. Yuri and I believe that the 20th anniversary provides an excellent opportunity for all nations to live up to their core values and stand firm on the rights of migrant workers by ratifying this convention. Today, over 200 million people live and work in a foreign country. Because they are outside the legal protection of their home countries, migrants are often particularly vulnerable to abuse and exploitation. In recognition of this, the United Nations drafted and adopted the Convention on the Protection of the Rights of All Migrant Workers and Members of Their Families on December 18, 1990. The Convention constitutes the broadest framework in international law for the protection of the rights of migrant workers and members of their families and provides guidance to states on how to respect the rights of migrants while developing and implementing labor migrant policies. The Migrant Workers Convention promotes humane and lawful working and living conditions for migrant workers and their families. Ratification of this core human rights instrument is an important step to end abuse and exploitation of migrants. To date, 42 states have ratified the convention, and a further 16 have signed up and are in process of ratification. More states must come forward in order to make migrants' rights a reality. Amnesty International, along with a coalition of 13 other organizations, is calling for the universal ratification of the Migrant Workers Convention. This campaign demands that governments act immediately to end the widespread human rights violation suffered daily by migrants around the world by ratifying this core international human rights instrument.
Described as Pope John Paul II as a shocking offense against human dignity and a grave violation of human rights, human trafficking remains one of the world's most lucrative trades, alongside illegal weapon and drug trade. The International Labor Organization estimates there are as many as 2.4 million men, women, and children fall victim to unscrupulous traffickers each year. While some victims are kidnapped or handed over in payment of family debt, most are lured by promises of well-paying jobs and opportunities abroad. After providing transportation and false travel documents for overseas jobs, as domestic workers like au pairs, models, etc., traffickers often charge exorbitant fees, lending way to lifelong debt bondage situations. More often than not, trafficking victims are often subjected to cruel mental and physical abuse, including beating, rape, starvation, forced drug use, confinement, and seclusion. Although the UN Treaty on the Rights of Migrant Workers was set up to provide a framework for member states to respond and to communicate their collective ability to help in the protection of these human rights, the NGOs, or non-governmental organizations, are clearly the ones who have the ability to go into the area of emergencies and respond directly to their needs. The UN Convention is flawed and would not be able to help migrants effectively. A couple flaws in this convention include that it's outdated, there are security concerns, and some countries don't even have the money or governmental infrastructure to implement it. My partner is going to go over these problems later. Right now I want to focus on our solution to migrant issues, NGOs, non-governmental organizations. What are they? The NGO handbook describes them as being considered to be non-state, non-profit-oriented groups who pursue purposes of public interest. NGOs have a lot of experience dealing with world issues, and some are as old or older than the UN itself. I'm going to talk about two NGOs that are helping with some of these issues, Caritas and the ICMC, the International Catholic Migrant.
The first is, why should the NGOs take the place of the UN Convention when the UN Convention itself can already take care of the migrant worker problem as a whole at once, instead of spending all the money, all the time, and all the effort that these NGOs do to protect these migrant workers? I mean, it just costs more money, it takes more time, and is very unnecessary. And I'd like to also say, who's in a better position to ensure the rights of migrants? The NGOs or the United Nations? The United Nations is because they have a greater legal force on the economy in the world as a whole, rather than the NGOs. Now, I'd like you all to imagine this. Say you're a migrant going to a different country, and you apply for a job, but are not ensuring even the minimum rights in the country as a migrant worker. Would this be fair? Would it be acceptable? No. My partner and I believe that migrant workers should be ensured even as little as the minimum rights in the country, because along with the work they do, they contribute to the society. Migrant workers are vital to our economies. I'd like to list some global benefits of migrant workers as well. As according to the Global Union Research Network, migrant workers make a substantial economic and social contribution to the economies of countries of destination and countries of their origin. Migrant workers spend most of their income in host countries. They pay taxes and social security contributions, and they're allowed to work legally. Migrant workers send home, on average, 13% of their income in remittances, but spend 87% in destination countries. Migration does create jobs. Migrant workers are consumers too. Many countries would be much poorer without migrants. Yet despite their contribution, migrant workers still face discrimination and exploitation. Non-ratification of the Migrant Workers Convention undermines state values. Protecting migrant rights is key to human rights. The Human Rights Watch says that the UN Convention guarantees basic human rights to all migrants, including the rights to life, due process, fair trials, and freedom of expression and religion, as well as equal treatment with nationals and respect to economic rights. My partner and I are in firm belief that all states should immediately ratify the UN Convention on the rights of migrant workers.
Now I'd like to go on to my main contentions. My main contentions are economic factors, security concerns, administrative obstacles, and financial obstacles, and state strategies. And this is by obstacles to the ratification of International Convention on Migrant Workers from UNESCO. Okay, first contention, economic factors. The idea of a convention emerged when Western countries were in need of a foreign labor force. This situation changed radically during the 70s, and by the time the convention was adopted, concerns with unemployment had long become dominant, and migration was not a priority anymore. Moreover, the convention be qualified as pre-globalization document that does not fully take into account the changes in the world economy that took place in the last decade. Second contention, security concerns. A more recent evolution in national and international politics regards security and terrorism. In the Asian Pacific, country reports show that states are busy adopting counter-terrorism conventions with little time left to consider other treaties. Moreover, in the field of migration policies, concerns over security have incited governments to consider anti-trafficking issues more important than broader migrant rights. Administrative obstacles. Several states have very little experience with migration policies. As a result, states are unable to cope with the task of evaluating the impact of the convention, confronting it to existing legal standards, and preparing the ground for political decisions on ratification. Second part. Migrants' rights are already dealt with by other international treaties, including notably 2 ILO conventions and the European Convention on the Legal Status of Migrant Workers. Even if the UN Convention is supposed to be a more comprehensive treaty, this leads to confusion, as states have no single text